The 150% energy premium. Microsoft is currently paying a 150% premium over market rates for power that will not even reach the public grid. While the press release focuses on carbon-free goals, the P&L shows a desperate bid to secure baseload power for the 2026 expansion of OpenAI models. By funding the restart of retired nuclear reactors, Microsoft is not being a good corporate citizen. They are trying to solve a physical bottleneck that chips alone cannot fix. The utility companies have finally realized they hold the leverage, and Redmond is paying whatever it takes to ensure their clusters do not go dark. This shift marks the end of the software era and the beginning of the industrial energy era for big tech. This desperation to secure electrons leads directly to the collapse of the traditional data center model, crashing into the compute wall. The 2026 compute wall is not a limitation of software architecture or silicon design. It is a thermal and electrical ceiling, where a single AI training cluster now requires the same wattage as a mid-sized city. Previous generations of data centers were built for 3 to 5 kilowatts per rack, but the latest liquid-cooled Blackwell clusters demand over 100 kilowatts in the same footprint. Municipal grids are already rejecting new hookup requests from Google and Amazon because the local infrastructure would literally melt. This is why the narrative has shifted from buying more GPUs to building private substations. If you cannot get a permit for the power, your billion-dollar pile of silicon is just a collection of very expensive paperweights. This physical constraint is forcing a radical change in how these companies account for their assets. The behind-the-meter margin play. Amazon and Microsoft are aggressively moving behind the meter to bypass the public utility commissions entirely. When a tech giant plugs a data center directly into a nuclear plant, they avoid the transmission fees and the regulatory hurdles that govern the public grid. It is a classic vertical integration play. By owning the power source or signing 20-year exclusive offtake agreements, they are effectively turning their energy costs from a variable OpEx headache into a fixed caped hedge. However, this move admits a harsh truth. The era of high-margin capital-light software is over. These companies are transforming into heavy infrastructure utilities that happen to sell API access. This transition from bits to atoms is showing up in the massive depreciation spikes on the balance sheet. The high cost of energy independence. Wall Street still values these companies as software businesses, but their balance sheets are starting to look more like Exxon or NextEra Energy. The capital expenditure required to build out private nuclear small modular reactors is staggering and carries a much longer ROI than a typical software cycle. Critics argue that these tech giants are overextending themselves by taking on the risks of nuclear operation and long-term decommissioning costs. But the alternative is worse. If they rely on the public grid, their AI margins will be cannibalized by rising electricity prices and grid instability. They are choosing the heavy lifting of infrastructure over the certainty of margin compression. This pivot to heavy assets creates a new kind of moat that competitors cannot simply code their way around. The signal under the noise. The pivot to nuclear power is a defensive moat designed to protect AI margins from the physical reality of the compute wall. As we saw with the Microsoft energy premium and the move behind the meter, these companies are no longer just competing on algorithms. They are competing on the cost of a gigawatt hour. This changes the game for investors. You are no longer betting on who has the best LLM, but on who has the best industrial supply chain for electricity. For operators, this means the bottleneck has moved from the engineering department to the power procurement team. The real implication is that the high-growth capital-light tech model is dead. In its place is a new breed of industrial conglomerate. Watch the Q3 depreciation schedules for Amazon and Google. If those numbers continue to climb alongside energy assets, it is a clear signal that they have accepted their new identity as power utilities with a software front end. Subscribe for more.